To many in society, the perception of globalization revolves around a couple of things. Most individuals first think about the detrimental aspects of globalization, often brought forth by Western influence. The exploitation of people and resources as found in the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. Others may think of megacorporations and conglomerates, the likes of GAFA, such as Apple or Google, and international institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF, perhaps. The globalization of the current, the most noticeable. And while globalization does bring its fair share of problems, some may find it hard to grasp the concept of globalization on a historic scale, how the actions of our ancestors thousands of years ago shaped a phenomenon that interconnects the diaspora of humanity together, how, in the early stages of civilization, regions such as Asia, Africa, and the Middle East began the unstoppable rally that is globalization. The book, Bound Together, How Traders, Preachers, Adventurers, and Warriors Shaped Globalization by Nyan Chanda, aims to spread that word, that globalization is not necessarily a recent phenomenon, but rather one of mankind's oldest impulses that has unfolded over thousands of years, snowballing into an unstoppable force. In this book, Chanda walks through the history of globalization by listing examples concerning four different societal roles: the adventurer, trader, the preacher, and the warrior. Adventurers ventured into uncharted territories, sailing across vast oceans and eventually settling small island chains in the Pacific. Individuals such as Magellan or Marco Polo paved the way for discoveries in new diplomacy, connecting distant lands. With the domestication of livestock like horses and camels, or the invention of sailboats, travel was accelerated significantly. Assyrian merchants often traveled hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, with many of them having secondary wives apart from their wives and family back home. The further ease of mobility increases opportunity to migrate to foreign countries for work, with most starting new lives there. Preachers spread religion across continents in an attempt to standardize their ideology, like how Muslim merchants spread Islam to Southeast Asia using the monsoon winds, or Buddhism being taught across the Silk Road into East Asia, or Christianity being forced upon natives in the Americas. Ambitious warrior leaders such as Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great conquered vast territories, mixing and assimilating different cultures and diffusing the gene pool. To this, Chanda explains that these adventurers of the past, migrating out of necessity whether it be food or land, have now been largely replaced by foreign tourists looking for stimulation. Caravan traders, like the unfaithful Assyrian traders, are being succeeded by multinational corporations transporting their goods on container ships. Traditional preachers still exist, but have been largely replaced in the grand scope of society by human rights organizations such as Amnesty International or the Human Rights Watch. Imperial ambitions of the past concerning the warrior have been transitioned to the years of colonization or the forced establishment of democracies by the West. I believe these four forces of globalization, mentioned by Chanda, align with the key aspects of our course in Erickson's text on perusal. Speed brought forth by mounts and vessels accelerated travel for adventurers, eventually leading to modern transportation. Increased mobility brought foreign labor to distant nations, creating pockets of isolated cultures like we see in the current world through long-distance nationalism. Ambitions for standardization began with the era of preachers, with social activist organizations now pushing for developing nations to adhere to strict rules like climate change or human rights. Genetic, cultural, or societal mixing that was established through conquest by warriors has shifted to themes of colonization and the waves of democracy. China notes that it is important to understand that globalization has its ups and downs. Western nations often spread their political systems and beliefs, and international institutions place strict regulations, creating larger wealth gaps between developing nations and developed nations. Environmental damage is also an imminent problem caused by the ever-increasing needs stemming from globalization. On the other hand, however, globalization has led to an overall higher standard of living for the world, with education and medicine becoming a universal gift. In fact, in my research, I have found that the World Economic Forum marks global literacy rate in 2022 to be 87%, a stark contrast when in comparison to the 12% global literacy rate in 1820. Through this book, Chanda aims to clear up the fog surrounding globalization, in which the perception of it is tainted by the overwhelming negative force of recent globalization, despite its numerous benefits. Chanda does a good job of this, with clever links and historical parallels. His claims are backed up by history. Chanda explains that it is the nature of humankind to attempt to thrive, and that globalization is not going to disappear, but in accordance. Chanda also mentions that the only possibility for a brighter future would be to individually accept differences and work together to alter globalization instead, concluding that calls to shut down globalization are pointless because nobody is in charge, but together we can attempt to nudge our rapidly integrating worlds toward a more harmonious course because we are all connected. In conclusion, with this book, Chanda aims to showcase how globalization is not a modern phenomenon, but rather a continuation of the actions that our ancestors have started since the day humans walked out of Africa. That globalization is a force that cannot be stopped, and that every single one of us are bound together by it.